You are listening to Think Theory Radio. Radio.
Hello and welcome to Think Theory Radio, the show that brings you topics outside the mainstream realm of thought and ideas to make you think. And I'm your host, Damian Perdue, your polymer guide on this biodegradable ride of plastic delights. And of course, I'm joined by Paulie C.
Yo.
And today we're going to talk about the plastic conspiracy.
The plastic conspiracy?
Yeah. Why are they forcing plastic into our bodies, trying to change the human construct into a ethylene and propylene-based organic body?
Aren't we already kind of evolving to become a plastic person anyway?
Exactly.
I mean, there's got to be so much plastic.
Yes,
within
exactly.
us. Yeah.
Why? And why? Who started this? Where did it come from? Who's profiting from it? Why are there microplastics found in people's genitals?
John DuPont. No, sorry.
You're not far off.
Yeah.
You're not far off. I mean, the DuPont Chemical Corporation, Dow Chemical Corporation, Exxon, they're all involved. They're all part of the conspiracy. But where did it all start? The origins of plastic go back to the late 1800s, but it wasn't until 1907 that the first commercially produced plastic, named Bakelite, sounds so benign and nice, was invented by chemist Leo Hendrik Baekeland in 1907, and it was initially produced by synthesizing coal tar and wood alcohol. So how do we get from, 120 years later that now there's 440 million metric tons of plastic produced each year? By 2019 alone, there was 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic already made.
As a quick question, how often does it biodegrade, though? Like, we're talking about each year.
Oh, plastics made of, like propylene and ethylene from fossil fuel hydrocarbons don't really biodegrade. So they last for anywhere from decades to possibly hundreds of years. And the thing is, they will break down, but they turn into what's for microplastics, but then into nanoplastics, which we can't even really measure. We don't really even know where they go. And, we'll get into the next segment, we'll get into a little bit more of like microplastics and stuff like that. But also I do have, quote unquote solutions, or maybe possible, hope. But part of the problem is that, who is pushing for more plastics and what's going on, right? Now, so you go from 1907, first plastics were made. And then, of course, the U.S. military gets involved. And they started experimenting with more universal uses for plastic during World War II. And that made it, and then what they realized is that using fossil fuels made it cheaper and easier to make plastic. So by the 1950s and 60s, plastic production had increased by 400%. And it's been climbing ever since. Okay. In the 1970s, when you had the oil crisis, fossil fuel companies really started to push for more plastic production because it was an offshoot to make money. Now, even right now, even as much as I just said of how much plastic is made, it's still only about 12% of the profits from fossil fuel companies.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense, though. The amount of, just warfare, gas, different cars, planes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let alone,
The
fuel for factories and
fuel itself is so much more valuable.
Energy,
yeah, but
right?
But
still, 12%. Yeah, but it's increasing, and now that you have it's kind of the catch-22 of the green movement and climate change, because you don't really hear, you get these little kind of media tidbits of there's microplastics found in the human brain. Blah, blah, blah. You're eating a credit card's worth of plastic a week, but it's not really true though. That's a skewed representation. I think I've read other reports that say it's like a grain of salt per week you're probably eating. So maybe like in the course of a year, you're eating about a credit card's worth of plastic. Even though I wouldn't want to eat any plastic, but it's not.
I'm eating a credit card a year?
A credit card.
In addition to the credit card a year that I want?
Start bombing the credit cards right now.
Every way, I'm just consuming credit cards every which way I can.
Right. You don't even cancel
every
the card,
possible
you
way
just
imaginable.
You just eat the
So
card.
what happened though? Think of it like so. You have this push for like stopping fossil fuel production, right? You know, like more electric cars, more whatever, solar power, whatever it is. And the fossil fuel companies are like, well, we still got to make money. We still have all this fossil fuel. What are we going to do? So they're lobbying, they're pushing for more and more plastic production. So while on one hand, people are like, drive less, get more economical, start using fossil fuel. On the other hand, they're still just producing more plastic with the fossil fuels. Now, remarkably, it is the carbon footprint of making plastic is actually smaller than making paper, because with paper, the energy it takes to create paper from trees and other plants is a lot higher than it is to create plastic. Plastic is more lightweight. The mass itself takes up less space than other byproducts and other waste. But back to like the biodegradableness, it just sits there forever, right? And as as the U.S. and other first world countries create more and more, we create, out of any country, we create the most single-use plastic waste in the world. The United States does. We also create the most single-use plastic.
Wait, even more than China?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, single-use plastic, yes. China produces the most plastic overall.
Yeah, because it's like what, a billion, or not a billion people, but I feel like they have close to that. We have like 320 million. So.
Yeah, but we're a much more what's the word? Just fast society, fast food society, right? Like, so we're a much more like
odd demand.
Yeah, everything just make plastic, throw it away. You know what I mean? And like we're kind of compared to China. China has a lot more strict rules on waste management and like littering and things like that. So the culture there is not really the type like we are. We're just throw the stuff on the ground. Who cares? Whatever. Yeah,
but aren't there countries that dump a lot of their garbage into the ocean? I'm not saying
Definitely
China
true.
is that country, but I thought they were considered one of those countries that was,
Not as far as I know. They were actually the largest recycling of plastic country until 2018 when they stopped accepting everybody else's plastics. They're like, it's too much.
Yeah, no,
So what we started doing is we started sending it all to third world countries, which is now, no, I'm serious, they're just ending up in landfills.
It just feels like a very American thing to do,
Right.
Yeah, just out of sight, out of mind. Like when Donald Trump says, "Stop counting the numbers." Yep, absolutely. We're just not going to think about it. It won't be a problem, which is ridiculous.
Yeah,
man. So even within that, I guess. So there's no way to recycle them, because I think even
there is a way, but here's the thing: it's
well, it's not profitable. Why would anyone?
Exactly, that's part of it.
Yeah, why would you think that anyone would want to recycle? It's not profitable. No one can make money at that. Governments would lose money. Like, are you serious? Sorry,
what do you think the percentage?
I think that's the argument.
That's a mentality.
Against
Yeah.
No, what do you think? But what do you think the percentage of plastic recycled is?
Like actually
like
recycled? Yeah,
8%,
I guess like
3%.
Now, what do you think that is? 8% of what per year?
Of all plastics
yeah,
discarded.
You're really close.
Of
9%.
all plastics discarded, 9% are via recycling versus garbage.
9% of all plastic ever made has been recycled. Only 9%.
And per year, how much are they recycling? That's because that's like.
I bet most of that was just because of what's been produced and what's been recycled recently. You know what I'm
Probably,
saying? Like, think of how much plastic wasn't recycled for how many years, and how much plastic just in general. How many times have you thrown away a plastic bottle in the garbage can?
Oh, for sure.
Do you always recycle a plastic? Yeah.
No. It's kind of like a disillusionment too. I think when I realized that. I still try to recycle things, but when I realize that it's not even really being recycled, and actually the whole concept of recycling plastic is kind of it's greenwashing, right? So it's a lot of the big fossil fuel companies, they pushed the propaganda essentially of like, yeah, recycle plastic, and using the media and everything, they try to put the onus on the people, the civilians, the populace, right? Like, oh, it's your fault. You're using too many straws, right? And you're not recycling enough. But that's not actually statistically the highest percentage of plastic waste is from industries.
Of
right?
course,
you know,
of course, though.
It's not from individuals, but they.
But I'd imagine individuals amass so much of an amount.
Yes,
yeah,
for sure. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think we should still do that. But when you hear like, oh, well, only 9% of all plastic has ever been recycled, you don't have the facilities because you have. Essentially,
it's not profitable.
It's not profitable, and there's
no incentive to do it.
Yep, it's
and what is it even being
profitable.
recycled into at a certain point?
It's actually cheaper to make new plastic than it is to recycle plastic. So that's another big problem.
Well, the cheapness is the primary factor.
Exactly.
Right there.
So it's all, and it ties into not just we've mentioned like Exxon, and which is the largest plastic. They're the largest producer of polymers for plastic in the world, and then Dow Chemical Corporation, I think, the second, and then there's Chinese corporations like the third, but also. It ties into like the banking system, all these like hedge funds and capital venturists and all they all have huge money invested in plastic production. Talking about BlackRock and Vanguard and all these big companies, they're like heavily tied into this. I mean, there's billions and billions and billions of dollars being made off of plastic production, and it's increasing every year. And they keep lobbying the governments to produce more and more and more, That's where we're at. Now, 50% of all plastics ever produced were made after the year 2000.
It's crazy. Wait, so in 25 years, we've had, 8 billion tons of plastic produced is basically...
Yeah, so there's...
you said there's 8 billion tons in circulation?
It's been about 10 billion by now. It's probably been made, since the beginning.
Oh, my God.
And so 50% of that has been made since the year 2000.
That's an exponential change.
Yeah.
And that's insane, especially given, really, what is it being recycled into? What is it being converted into? It's not.
Right. And the other part, it's like when you recycle plastic, it gets weaker. So, you ever get those like the water bottles that are super flimsy?
Oh, true.
That's like recycled plastic.
That's crazy.
Right. So a lot of companies don't want to use it, or it's harder to make because it gets lodged into the mechanisms. And, so there's that aspect of it. But also, I think if they spent the money to create the right infrastructure for recycling, it could become profitable later down the line. Right.
For an example, I remember back in the day when I was a wee one. My grandfather was so excited that like Sarasota or Winter Haven, Florida had like park benches that were made out of recycled plastics. So, there's like a civic way where it's like you can take something and turn it into something. But
true, that's something that needs to last. I understand that. But I think that the main problem becomes like everything else in life, like including people, right? They degrade and they kind of become one with the earth again. I feel like this kind of stops the whole cycle, and that becomes the real question, right?
Becomes one with the earth, but that's like not a natural.
Well, that's what he's saying, right?
You know what I'm saying? It kind of stops the whole cycle, and that becomes, I don't know, maybe that is part of the problem as to why we think about like global warming or like these large die-offs of these different things. Is we've introduced something like so unnatural into the environment that it's like the energy is not being replaced and or it's just kind of sitting there, whatever these nanoparticles are, but I don't know. I think that becomes that's the interesting thing about it. Like, man has the beauty of like being able to create such amazing things, right? But also, on that same flip side, right, of being able to destroy and create insanity. So I don't know. I guess we'll kind of see where this ends up going. But we're kind of talking about this has basically only been here for about 50 years. So
yeah, it's roughly 50 in the 50s is when mass production of plastic really started. And it's everywhere. Look in the studio. It's the chair handles here are plastic. My car key thing is plastic. My iced coffee container is plastic. The microphone is plastic. The computer is plastic. Like there's everything around you is plastic. It's hard to really escape it. And another problem is that, like I said, we're shipping things off to third world countries, but also a lot of the, countries that were third world that are coming up, that are starting to, galvanize their economy and everything, like India or other places, they're now getting into plastic production, so it's, while we may be at a point where like, okay, we're going to start using other things, and alternatives, they're just starting to do their own. So the plastic production is not slowing down. It doesn't appear to be.
What countries were you listing off? You said like India.
Yeah, what is the term, for like a newly industrialized country, right?
And think of how many people that is.
Yeah, developing, exactly.
Yeah.
Developing.
But like just how many people in India alone. So the plastic demand and production is probably going to be just as much as American, if not more. You know?
Now, I did read, there are, like in Europe, the European Union came up with a protocol. I don't know if it was part of the Paris Agreement or not, but to essentially, I think by 2027, they're supposed to make it, if you have any kind of PET plastic, which is essentially the fossil fuel plastic, it has to have at least 25% recycled ingredients, and then it's supposed to increase per year. And as that goes on, there's hope. A lot of environmentalists think that this will have a trickle down effect to other countries. Once because Europeans also and Americans are large consumers of it. So if these companies have to make plastic products that are more recycled in order to make money, then maybe that'll change it up a little bit over the course of time.
And also actually making a policy initiative, right, where it kind of gradually slopes up. It should, right? Unless there's really monetary consequences, or even if those monetary consequences, there might be those, but unless they're actually substantial, that really becomes a question of how effective they will be. So, but I do think that, even if we talk about effectiveness, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try or implement those things as we're still here,
Yeah. Part of the problem, though, is like who's behind it. Like I said, these are huge companies you're talking about, from, Exxon to Vanguard to BlackRock and all the, and they have so much lobbying power. And, the other thing is fossil fuel subsidies, so they're getting money from the government to create it.
Absolutely. Or they're playing, or they got hands in both baskets, right? Being able to cherry pick the pieces which they want. And from the standpoint of capitalism, absolutely, right? That's what they're probably trying to do. But from the standpoint of actually the longevity of the earth and trying to make sure that, we're not trying to go to Mars, which is, I think, is a ridiculous notion within itself.
Yeah.
That's where it becomes kind of questionable.
Well, I've been wondering, I was thinking about that too, are you building all these ships to go to Mars or back to the moon or whatever? And then maybe this is naive of me, but couldn't we just make ships that just shoot all the plastic into the sun? I don't know if that's entirely beneficial, but I feel like the sun would probably burn it up. I don't know.
But I will say, though, that
would take quite an effort to get it all the way out.
But if you're going to send a ship to Mars, maybe
and matter can never be created or destroyed, though, so it'll just be transformed into something else. We'd just be throwing a big trash ball. You know what? You probably just gave a new billionaire an idea. We shoot the trash into the sun.
Yeah. Or we're just going to shoot balls of plastic out into the universe and
it'll be
that's the way we contact aliens. And some aliens are like, hey man, stop sending your trash over here.
All these pizza boxes and nonsense, Harold's chicken, what? That's right. You getting the good stuff, aliens. We sending it to y'all.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get into microplastics, how that's affecting people's health. What can we do about it? And then we'll get into some, hopefully, solutions to the plastic conspiracy here on Think Theory Radio.
Plastics.
Exactly how do you mean?
There's a great future in plastics.
Welcome back to Think Theory Radio. This is Damien, and today we're talking about the plastic conspiracy. What was that clip from?
The Graduate.
There's a great future.
Plastics, my boy. Plastics.
That's right. We just talked a little bit about a little bit of the history of plastic, who controls the plastic industry, who profits from it. Now, microplastics is where we're going next, and this has been kind of a hot topic. I know the media loves to grab onto little sound bites and tidbits and little background stats and throw out at people, scare you into submission. But what is the real deal with microplastics? Well, it is true that they have found in autopsies, they have found microplastics in the human brain, in people's lungs. They have found them in genitalia. They've found in many other body parts. And also they have found them in newborn babies who they believe might be getting it through the mother's breast milk. Right?
We're evolving.
That's
evolving.
right.
We will be
Cyborg
plastic.
Yep, that's right. Plastic men.
Yes.
And then we got the phones.
You ever see Battlestar Galactica?
No.
What are you talking about?
Okay,
The
so
Borg?
there was the Cylons.
The Cylons.
The Borg of Star Trek.
Oh, true. I'm
Come
messing
on,
them up.
man.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm sorry.
The Cylons.
Yeah.
The Cylons, though, were these like synthetic humans, that like kind of tried to take over and eventually did get like their own planet. But, then it's like, what if the Cylons or some kind of like synthetic organisms are already running the world and they're just trying to turn us all into plastic beings?
You didn't even know they were fighting with the reptilians this whole time. That's what the Secret War is about. That's right. Everybody, you get on here where facts matter. Facts matter.
Right, now back to the facts. Microplastics have been found in land, sea, and air, in the food chain, human body. It's been found in a lot of fish. A lot of fish that people consume on a day-to-day basis has microplastics in it from the ocean, from the fishing nets. Now there is a lot of, like I said, there's part of the problem is you get kind of over exaggerations of statistics as well. When you have like environmentalist groups or the media that want to use like kind of stats.
Fish is 40% plastic.
Right, yeah.
Like, whoa.
Or like, because you've heard of like the garbage island, right? Or like the plastic island.
Yeah, floating around in
it's
the ocean.
It's a big, huge. And so in your
Oh
mind, you think it's like one big island of plastic, but that's not really what it is. It's more like a peppery soup of plastic.
Yeah, it's like the murky ocean waters.
Yeah,
the,
but
the
it's not
murky
like one
brine
big
of
mass.
garbage.
It's
Yeah.
like
But do they stay
little bits of
together, kinda
plastic.
together, or
Well,
they
they're all
just
just
like
kind of
little
floating around
plastic
in a
birds?
big area, probably because the currents kind of keep them around together. But it's not like one big island that you could stand on. It's more like there's little bits and pieces. Now it's still bad, right?
We're building a naval base on Garbage Island.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly.
Control the Atlantic Ocean. That's right. Key strategic place.
But they have found plastic in some of the. I mean, they found plastic in the Mariana Trench,
Yeah.
which is like the deepest part of the ocean.
way down.
That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, they have found it in a lot of agricultural farms because, like, the sludge and fertilizer they use has like plastic waste in it. It's just
Think of those
seeping through everything.
The fish with the light, all the way down to like they're getting the plastic too, so they're evolving too.
Right.
Like every animal is going to be plastic.
Now,
soon.
you can say that that's one of the everlasting things that I guess that mankind might sadly leave to this earth is the creation of plastic.
You might be right.
Oh,
Oh
there's
my
so
God,
much more. There's
that's
so much
bleak.
more.
That is insanely bleak. That is
Well, then there's like products that use microbeads of plastic,
Yep.
like cosmetics, toiletry products, and they use little microbeads or even like microfiber washcloths that has plastic in it. And the more you use things, there's things I didn't even think about, like your shower curtain, the vinyl shower curtain. That eventually rubs off, decreases, and goes down into the water, into the drain,
What?
goes into the water supply. Yeah.
Because I know there's like
makes sense though.
the apricot scrub and stuff, that has the microbeads, but you're talking about the shower curtain.
Yep.
Everything degrades over time, which makes me wonder, like, in certain, like, maybe we just haven't seen how. Maybe it just takes such a long time to degrade. That maybe mankind won't even be here to understand what it is.
You might be
and
right.
what it turns
That's
into.
part of the problem is because it is relatively new in the history of humans. I mean, obviously, like we said, it's 50 to 70 years. We don't really know. And the studies that are coming out now that they believe they're linking microplastics to anything from thyroid issues to heart problems to strokes to cancer, but there aren't enough studies to direct correlation between those because it's all fairly new. But the problem a lot of scientists have is because plastics get so small. So basically microplastic is anything that's 5 millimeters or smaller, right? Now it can get even so small that it penetrates human cells. So we don't really know the full extent of the damage it can do to the human body because this is all relatively new in terms of how much we're ingesting. And, if you go back 50 years or 40 years, people weren't eating a lot of products that were, in plastic containers. They weren't microwaving plastic. That's another big problem is because you're heating the plastic, and then the food is absorbing a lot of the microplastics and then you're eating it. If you're using like a plastic spatula to cook, that eventually is rubbing off into your food. Plastic utensils, anything like
Cutting
that,
boards,
right?
knives,
Cutting
all that
boards,
stuff.
exactly. All of that. And that's just one thing. There's also driving around your tires as they wear off. The microplastics are just going into the air.
Is rubber? I thought rubber was something else.
But it's like a rubber synthetic, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So there's, true rubber isn't plastic, but the synthetic, they add it in there to
stretch it like anything. Absolutely. Increase the margins.
Exactly.
Somebody got to get a new yacht.
Well, a pure rubber tire would be so expensive to produce, and
You know what? Make it happen. Make it happen. No,
And I mean, even then, what kind of grip are we talking about? And I don't know, is it going to be bouncy?
there was
car's going to hop,
It might do.
Yeah,
Jump
they
out the
even
gym.
found nanoplastic particles in the Alps from tire wear.
From tire wear? Like,
Yeah.
are they getting what? Oh, from them driving something up there?
I guess, yeah.
True, man. Could you
And then
imagine
you-
driving a snowmobile up there? Oh, my God. That's
And
what Jeff Bezos probably does in his free time, destroying our Alps.
And I mean, it's like in everything. Obviously, bottled water has the largest amount of microplastic particles found in it, which is like the exact amount. I don't know. It's like 94 gram per liter per milliliter or something like that. But there's, and then even beer, some beer, because you have a lot of beer now, it's plastic. Air.
Aren't the
they found
cans
it in
like literally the
tap
cans
water
they have?
even?
Isn't there like literally a bag around the cans that they make? Maybe I'm just watching too many untrue YouTube videos or Instagram videos.
What do
but
you mean,
I
a
thought,
bag?
I thought like each can they make, there's
Yeah.
I thought there was a plastic bag encapsulating the can.
You might be right. I think
Inside of
I don't
the
know
can.
if all of them use that, but I think some of them do have like a lining.
the
Yeah, a
lining,
liner of
yeah.
plastic. Yeah, I thought so. We're right there.
Carbonated beverages, I think, have that because of the
So then beer
the
definitely wouldn't.
acid kind of goes through it. I don't think beer has. I think beer is the metal. I think it's carbonated beverages like sodas, like
Really?
with the phosphoric acid. I want to say is the reason why.
It's very
Yeah.
interesting.
The reason why I know that is because I collected Blackhawks when they won Stanley Cups at the Coke can, and one day I woke up to a hissing sound, and it was one of the cans sprung like a pinhole leak. It was, over time it wears away at the liner. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Learn something
Well, and
new.
even the microplastics are small enough to pass through water filtration systems as well.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
At this point, man, plastic is the new.
I mean,
I'd
they
say
found it
it's
everything.
been
Like
a
there
big
was a
thing.
2022 study that found broken down microplastics in blue mussels off the Australian coast.
Well, those are filters. Like a lot of those oysters and mussels and
I don't
things
know if
of
they
that nature.
filter plastic though.
No, they filter everything though in the sea, so that makes
Yeah.
sense. I feel like what's happening, right, is that this is a conjecture, right? But
Mm-hmm.
clearly, it's breaking down into such small particle sizes, right, that it's just kind of moving throughout. Definitely the ocean. That's why it's been found in so many different fish, right? And then clearly, I'm guessing these things get eaten, and it keeps getting passed down the chain, somewhat like mercury and these other byproducts.
Yeah, and they've even found and like I said, a lot of these studies are fairly new, so I don't want to say I would say take it with a grain of plastic.
Okay.
But a new study in the U.S. found that both microplastics and nanoplastics in higher concentrations in the placentas from premature births than births that went full term. And a quote from the professor who did it said, "Our study hints at the possibility that the accumulation of plastics could be contributing to the occurrence of preterm birth," which is insane. You know what I mean? And then we didn't even get into like the environmental racism of plastic production, right? So in the U.S., where you have like, we are one of the biggest, if not the, it's us and China that are pretty much the biggest producers of plastic. And they call them plastic. I believe we are the largest producer of plastic food stocks, which is essentially the building blocks for plastic products, right? So we create the plastic food stocks, then we sell it to China, then China makes the products, and then they sell those back to us, right? And to whoever else. But these, factories are pretty much the majority of the time in low-income brown and black areas in the country, right? I don't know if you've ever heard of Cancer Alley in New Orleans. So it's this area in New Orleans that has a ton of fossil fuel corporations, a lot of plastic producers, and this area where they've built all these companies has one of the highest rates of cancer in the country, right? And it's 91% black. And they have been fighting. They did get one corporation, they fought and they were able to get one corporation to not build their plant there, but they're now currently fighting another one. It's looked like they're probably going to lose that. And in one article I was reading, a woman who was one of the activists down there was talking about how, there was another area in New Orleans that was a mostly, white area. And all it took was like their local parish to have, a petition to stop this company building a factory there. And they didn't do it, where in the black communities, it doesn't really happen that way.
No, absolutely, right? Because some of it is the political clout, but also just, a lot of these companies, they don't necessarily care unless you have the funds, right? Or the legal manpower, the resources, whatever it might be, right? To be able to put up a fight and actually cost them whatever their profit margins are. And so I bet, especially over there, they kind of benefit from the fact that a lot of these people are probably in poverty. They don't have resources and they take advantage of it and they make money off of that. And then they say, what can you really do? All the while, and the crazy thing too is that then they'll give out a couple jobs to the community, right? Which, absolutely jobs are important, right? But it's like when we talk about how much this then costs the community in, hospital bills and different lifelong diseases and different, different things within your
impacts,
life.
Right.
Yeah, right. That make
she was even saying that they don't even hire majority of black people. So that
absolutely,
like you said, they probably give a couple token jobs and then that's it.
And they won't hire people for the jobs which actually could make a difference within said place, right? They'll hire them. I wouldn't even say token jobs, right? Because we talk about DEI, this, that, and the third, right? But really within it, they might hire them for like maybe a custodial job, or even if that, not even hire them, keep hiring people from outside of the community. And then time and time again, right, we talk about, sure, they might be bringing property taxes, but then they're also bringing asthma and cancer and all these other different ailments. And it's just, it's definitely, I feel like when we talk about all these different systems, colonialism and like the military industrial complex, right, slavery, all these things, they've just been reinvented and they now have a new name, but they're basically just the same stuff being perpetuated.
For sure. And I mean, with the current administration, like pretty much defunding the EPA and giving more deregulation to these corporations. And like I said, we've talked about the money behind these big companies. And so the lobbying power is there that like, it's not really going to change. It's probably only going to increase. And especially at a point where, the whole, argument about jobs and everything. So
you should be happy to be employed.
Exactly.
That's right.
Kind of
Cancer be damned.
Right.
And we give you insurance. We give you insurance. Aren't you grateful?
Our cost people have figured it out, and we'll just pay the settlement. Instead of
oh my God. So
and you should be thankful. We do get a tax break while you might recover from cancer and get it again and not be able to have it covered by your medical.
I mean, and who knows, maybe the human body is resilient enough to absorb the microplastics and jetted out as waste or something. Like I said, a lot of these studies are very recent. We don't know the full impact. We won't probably know for a long time. But I would just think any kind of foreign object leaking into your brain is probably not good. Even if it's a micro, less than 5 millimeters, I don't know. But there are okay, like, on the positive side, you have like there's the Microbead Free Waters Act, which prohibits the manufacturing, packaging, and distribution of rinse-off cosmetics and non-prescription drugs. I mean, it's also like in toothpaste, plastics in toothpaste. It's in gum.
Every one of those things is wrapped in plastic.
Yeah, but it's also like, yeah, exactly. But even gum like has plastic in the gum itself that you're chewing.
I didn't know that.
At least like the commercial brand ones, you can get all natural. That's actually made from like tree sap or whatever it is.
Wait. So you're talking about like Wrigley's and all that stuff? Wow, I never knew that.
Yep.
I mean, I knew it's like don't swallow it because it takes 7 years to digest.
Yeah.
That's probably why.
All that plastic.
No, that's not true. That's an old wives' tale.
But then there's I was reading there's a team of researchers at Sichuan University has developed check this one out. This is a weird science one. A tiny robot fish that can collect microplastics.
You've talked about that for sure. For those of you playing at home. I don't know if the robot fish would be on there.
They got to release a whole bunch of robot fish into the ocean.
Yeah, that's cool.
Absolutely. They probably will not. That'll go.
There's a BBC reported a removal method using vegetable oil, iron oxide, and magnets. Following 5,000 tests, the technique was found to be 87% effective at extracting microplastics from water. Operation Clean Sweep and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Trash-Free Waters Initiative are both working to remove harmful human-made rubbish from the ocean. So there is, there's a company called Wasser, which has developed a system that can remove 95% of plastics from water, and Orgo Fiber, which makes biodegradable sapling bags to replace the single-use plastic ones. I mean, and then when you start looking up the things that were plastic in it, I mean, tea bags, right? So if you get the tea bags that are that kind of like shiny mesh, that's plastic.
Like almost like nylon almost.
Yeah, that's plastic. So you don't really want to use that because it once you heat it up, the microplastics will, decompose off of it or whatever. So if you get the papery ones, like the old school tea bags,
huck them at people that display Trump flags in their yard. I'm not saying I do.
Just bury it in there.
I'm not saying I do.
But here's a couple if you want to know like some little tricks, you can choose tap water, not bottled water. Don't microwave plastic. I said before.
That's my favorite way to
get rid of the
plastic
kitchenware. Choose natural fibers for carpets, furnishing, and clothing, because a lot of the synthetic stuff is plastic. If you drink tea, like I said, avoid the plastic tea bags. You can use your own non-plastic reusable cup if you go to a cafe or whatever else. Skip the plastic baby bottles. Rethink your nonstick pans, because those nonstick pans, the Teflon, releases millions of microplastics and nanoplastics when you're using them. Keep an eye out for hidden plastics in menstrual products, and avoid personal care products with intentionally added microplastics.
Now, it's like nylon and all those other ones. Are those plastic? Like Teflon, anyone that ends in ON, typically, is that how that goes?
Yeah.
Nylon, Teflon.
All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look some solutions. And of course, like everything in this world, what can save us? Hemp. And on Think Theory Radio right after this.
You're listening to WCPT 820, because facts matter.
Welcome back to Think Theory Radio. Today we are discussing the plastic conspiracy. And shout out to Dylan. He had to jet out. Thank you for your contribution to the show.
It's always fun when he shows up.
Yeah. He's a good conversationalist.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've talked about all the bad things about plastic. Is there any good things? You know me, I don't like to be all doom and gloom. Right? I have a little hope in the world,
Well, yeah, like the there's everyday products we use that are made of plastic that we know and love and help with our everyday enjoyment of life.
True. I mean, I have my plastic cup right here filled with coffee. But what can we do? What are the alternatives? Now, obviously,
Paper straws, man.
see, and that's like, I hate that it's always these little things that become kind of the like molehill into a mountain, right? Where don't get me wrong, I don't really like the paper straws that much.
Yeah, but at times it makes sense. At times it makes sense.
But there's also there are bioplastic straws.
Yeah.
That do degrade, and maybe they're a little more flimsy, but they are better than the paper straws, and they're obviously better for the environment than
there needs
plastic.
to be more straws that are an after dinner mint.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I saw there's a lot of companies creating kind of cool environmentally friendly, but also beneficial packaging. Where I know there's one company that makes, I don't know if they do the straws like this, but I know they do coffee cups that they're biodegradable, but they also have like seeds in them. So if you do end up throwing it off the side of the road, it'll break down and a tree or a flower or whatever. Yeah. I actually saw at the store the other day, I saw a candle. It was like lavender scented candle, but after you burn it and the little like waste that's left, along with the paper packaging it came in with, you bury that and it would grow lavender plant. Stuff like that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But what about hemp, man?
What about hemp?
Hemp bioplastic.
Hemp bioplastic. That's 21st century right there.
It's a type of biodegradable plastic made from hemp fibers, which has sufficiently high cellulose concentration in manufacturing polymers. And it's made of lipids and cellulose found in the stalk and seeds of hemp plants. Hemp is one of the richest natural sources of cellulose, which contains up to 70 to 80%, making it a prime candidate for bioplastic production.
But of course, the 21st century version of John DuPont and William Randolph Hearst are stopping this from becoming a thing.
Yeah. Well, there isn't a big, push to stop it. I'm
joking.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, I guarantee you that probably in some back room, some lobbyist is like, you don't want to do that. They can't let this
happen. This is going to corner the market.
Exactly. Yeah. But I found there's some, now obviously there's, the advantages, pros and cons, right? So some of the advantages are it's safe composition, biodegradability and compostability. It's renewable, low carbon footprint. It's energy efficient production, durable and lightweight, and promotes sustainable agriculture. Now, some of the disadvantages are the limited availability because the companies don't want to make it. The production cost is a little higher now to make than traditional plastics, but that could come down if they started making more facilities that make.
There's just no incentive. There's just no profitability, and just.
And I know, but that's such a it's like this catch-22.
Figured it out. The amount of money that it costs to just pay off the cancer bills,
right.
It's just way cheaper than recycling it.
Yeah. Now it is biodegradable, but there is like recycling challenges because the material is mixed with some additives that can be hard to recycle. Has a shorter shelf life, so you can't really make, regular plastic can last obviously for a long time. So it's sitting on a shelf. It's not going to wear down and melt or whatever like hemp bioplastic. But it is a pretty good alternative. There are companies that are making like hemp-based car parts with 3D printing. BMW, Mercedes-Benz have experimented with hemp composites and door panels, dashboards, and insulation parts. And hemp filament is now used in 3D printing, offering biodegradable alternative to PLA or ABS plastics. Hemp 3D filament can be used for prototyping, package design, or low-volume custom parts. And you can use it in cosmetics because we talked about like the micro beads. You can use it for lipstick tubes. And they are cosmetic brands are turning to use this right now. Cream jars and caps, brush handles and compacts. So there is that. Right now, according to Research and Markets, the global bioplastics market is expected to grow from 15.5 billion a couple of years ago to 44.7 billion by 2030, with hemp playing a growing role in this shift. Now, that's pretty minuscule compared to the fossil fuel industry production and profit, but at least it's there, right? That's one aspect. And it's not the only one, though. You also have other kind of bioplastics, like seaweed.
Oh, yeah.
Seaweed can be used. Bezeos. It's like B''Zeos.
Jeff Bezos?
I know. When I first saw it, that's what I thought. I was like, is this an alternative name? No, it's a Norwegian startup. And this is the first company to use seaweed to develop sustainable packaging.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos wouldn't be messing with seaweed.
No. They introduced their first product in 2018, which was an edible drinking straw. We're talking about the straws. A seaweed straw.
An edible one.
An edible
Yeah,
one.
but not an after dinner mint.
No.
those. Yeah.
Hey, you should look that up. Google that. See if there is any kind of like
dinner mint
bioplastic.
Yeah.
Mint flavored bioplastic.
Mint flavored bioplastic.
Well, that's what it would
Can
be.
It just
That's
be
what
an
you're talking about.
edible straw that's bioplastic.
But mint, that's what you want, though.
Yeah, edible mint straw.
But they've also produced condiment packets, cutlery, plastic wrap, and they are designed of
edible straws,
biodegradable.
tropical mix, strawberry. Yeah, there's
There you go.
several.
See, they're out there. But the seaweed.
I don't know. It's candy though. It's not like a straw.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey,
But there is a YouTube how to make edible, eco-friendly straws from scratch.
Maybe we start a new company, Paul. Minty flavored straws.
We'll talk after the show. Nobody listen to this.
I know. Wait, oh man, should have said that on the
said
air,
it first.
Right? Dump that part.
Poor
Paul.
man's
Dump it.
copyright. Poor man's copyright.
But the seaweed straw, they biodegrade in less than 47 days, which is pretty good. Notpla, N-O-T-P-L-A, they create a seaweed-based cutlery and anti-grease protective seaweed coating instead of like the Teflon coating for nonstick pans. There's also bio-PET, which is the sustainable analog of PET, which is polyethylene
We talk about these things, but
terephthalate.
where do you find these things? You know what I'm saying? Like you can't just go to the store and
Right,
yeah,
I know.
Walmart. Do you have the eco-friendly frying pan without the Teflon in it?
Yeah, I feel like right now, and this is just me speculating, is that a lot of these products are pretty much only made commercial for like, bigger industries like restaurants. Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
Or just like bougie, sharper image type of stuff, like Pier 1 or, yeah.
Yeah, like I've seen these products at like cafes and stuff that want to be more, environmentally friendly or restaurants in this nature. But I haven't seen them necessarily in the stores. Yeah, especially when you break it down. See, the thing is like, another problem. It's the same thing with like eating healthy. It's more expensive. It's like that candle I mentioned. It was like $32. It's like a poor person's not going to buy a $32 candle because it can grow them lavender.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What are they going to do with that? Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have to like get it down to that level of where if you're going to McDonald's, they're using seaweed straws, right? Because that's what it needs to be. Yeah. Because it's the majority of people don't have enough money to buy.
McDonald's has so many stores around the world that they cannot afford, for the sake of consistency, to do the seaweed straw. There's no incentive financially to do it.
I know. That's the messed up thing. And at what point will it get in there? Eventually it will have to.
The worldwide consciousness of, we need to understand how we're destroying the planet as 8 billion people and counting.
Yep. But but it's like, here we are talking about it on our little show here, once a week, and I don't know.
So many people are listening right now.
Exactly.
All of you, all 250,000 of you, just call us right now.
But you never really see this like a topic on, mainstream media or big news, and when they do, they don't really talk about it in the way, like I said, they always try to put the onus on the individual people. Like, oh, you need to recycle your plastic. Oh, you're consuming too much. It's your fault. It's like, no, the
Look, I was in that generation. The millennial, like they were pushing Save the World. You know, when I was a little kid, like 1990.
Oh yeah,
around
Captain
that.
Planet and everything.
all that
and
stuff. Yeah.
No, for sure. And don't get me wrong. Yes, we need to, be responsible as well. But the majority of the waste comes from industries. It comes from the manufacturing of the plastic. It comes from the waste that they produce. That's like 90% of it. And we are about 10%. So us recycling our straws and our cups are not doing anything, especially if only 9% of it's being recycled.
How sad is that? How sad, even if we did our part. How sad is that? I'm saying, because we can't discount the fact that you walk anywhere, especially in this city, any city, anywhere in the United States, doesn't even matter if it's a large city or not, how much you see plastic and just waste, just like whether, it's loose, whatever, it's just plastic bags, It's just so wasteful, and it's everywhere. The side of the highway, you see the wind will blow it into a fence, and it just gathers along the fence. All that plastic, all that waste.
Oh, I know. I even think I have just like a swarm of plastic bags gathering in my pantry, and I have a bag like a cloth bag that I use when I go grocery shopping, and I try to always use bring a bag with me. But I still, even though I use my own bag, I still have an accumulation of plastic bags. So many like people that use, and I hate when you go to certain stores and you buy, someone buying like a can of pop and they're putting it in a plastic bag. It's like, it's one can of pop, just handle it,
Well, especially like if you buy alcohol, though, if you're buying like one can or a 6-pack, you have to put it in plastic.
Yeah, exactly. It has like a little handle on it. Like you don't need it. And that's a very American thing. I know in Europe they don't do that. They won't give you a plastic bag. Most people bring their own bag, or you just carry it in your hands. Like they won't. Most stores I've been to out there in a lot of the countries, they don't even have plastic bags. But so another, and because we got a little doom and gloom again. But here's another, positive note to kind of end on. And I looked this up because I remember doing this on a Weird Science about. Remember when we talked about the bacteria they found that could eat plastic?
Yeah.
Right? So I was like, okay, well, is there anybody actually using it? You know?
Yeah, right, yeah.
And there are. There's a French biotech startup called Carbios, and they're using bacterial enzyme to recycle the PET plastic into new plastic. And they have a facility processing 250 kilograms of PET waste daily. Okay, so that's, it's a start.
Something. Yeah.
There's also research efforts. Rice University scientists have engineered bacteria with a muscle-inspired adhesive to degrade PET more efficiently. It's like Dylan was saying, with the muscles will eat anything. Nanyang Technological University, researchers have developed an artificial worm gut using bacteria to break down plastics. National Science Foundation, research has shown that genetically modified bacteria can break down PET in salt water at room temperature. University of Korea scientists are engineering E. coli bacteria to produce biodegradable plastics. I don't know if I want to go there. Get your E. coli plastic, people. There's
I was thinking about what if they do have this bacteria. And we need it. We need to order more bacteria. We need to make more bacteria. And it's detrimental to society or our health to have all this plastic eating bacteria.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying,
well, I know.
It's problem solved.
I know. It's kind of one of those
the new
things,
thing that eats flesh and everything we know, and it's bad.
I know. It is always the crapshoot where it's like, oh, this is great. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, no.
It sets society back again. Yeah.
There is another startup called Breaking, which is developed at the Weiss Institute of Harvard University, is using synthetic biology and naturally derived solutions to degrade multiple types of plastics. So there are people out there trying to figure out solutions to this problem, but it is an uphill fight, and it's a fight against a lot of powerful people and money, right? So
there's just no incentive. There's just no incentive.
Not yet.
There's no financial incentive.
Not yet. But once these companies start showing that it's profitable to do it, And maybe at some point when these big fossil fuel companies realize there's no more fossil fuel, they'll have to do something else. So we'll see what happens in 100 years. All right, that's it for the Plastic Conspiracy on Think Theory Radio. We'll be back again next week and every Saturday, 6 to 7 p.m. right here on WCPT 820 Think Theory Radio.